Okay, now we're back into the claim, what do they call it? Undertaking sort. And we've been through the undertaking sort. It was on the first video that we put up. They talked about giving back all the documents, and that if I did not give the undertaking to the effect noted, ISS would be left with no choice but to commence legal proceedings against Mr. Aggett and any other persons obtained to obtain orders to restrain him from, or any person from, causing detriment to ISS with the misuse of confidential documents. So what they were trying to do was gag anybody and everybody who I possibly was involved in or knew or associated with who may be disclosing documents. But these were their own employees, so they were still working for them. So how you're going to gag them, I have no idea, because nobody knew who they were or how I got the documents. So, and I will never disclose who, why, where or how. The fact is they arrived in my mailbox and I then passed them on to the AFP or other relevant authorities. Then I just FOI'd the documents back because then I could publish them. I'm informed by my solicitors that I wrote to them inviting them to attend a without prejudice meeting with a representative of ISS Security. For the purpose of the meeting was to meet with Mr. Aggett and give him an opportunity to discuss his concerns, in which he appeared to have with the actions of ISS Security and reporting the conduct of during the investigations to the AFP. The suggestion of the meeting was intended to be an opportunity for ISS Security to explain the position to concerning Mr. Aggett's concerns and demands. Meeting and the proposed was strict without prejudice basis and with denial of liability to Mr. Aggett. Mr. Aggett was given until the 10th of March to accept the offer of the meeting of ISS. Now, when I first got that letter, I thought, oh, we're coming to the table for the first time. That was nothing more than a stall tactic. So I gave them a response straight away about, yeah, I'll come to that for sure. Now, in that time, they were using that time to get their court documents together. There was never going to be that meeting. It was never going to happen, because by the end of that, I was already summoned to court. So whilst they were playing, oh, let's just suck him in, they didn't. They turned straight away around and went serving. So I was served only a few days after that, after I replied to that letter. So it was just a stall tactic, because they knew if they sat me in an office with them, I'd bury them, 100%, because everything they had was wrong. The information they were given was wrong, and I can tell you why it was wrong, because I gave it to them. Their staff members, management, like Steve Castell, who now works for the Transport Department on main roads, was one of their supervisors, and he would come up and quiz me about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and why I'm doing it and blah blah blah, and I would feed him every wrong bit of information I ever had. Nothing I told him was factual. It was linked to factual events, but the input that I had about my involvement was all incorrect. Really, I had nothing to do with it. But I knew he thought I did, so I gave him some information to say I did. I wanted to know why he was interested. So everything that he reported was incorrect. And that's what you need to do when someone comes up and starts quizzing you about what you're doing, how you're doing, why you're doing. You need to give them factual events with the wrong information, so it sounds like a good story. And that way, when they report it back, everything they're going to operate off for a document like this to court is all incorrect. And they'll say, but didn't you say? And I'll go, yeah, I did. I said that to him. And why did you say that? Because I knew he was sussing out for them, so I thought I'd give him some wild information that would make them all juicy at the mouth, and it's all incorrect. The real person to talk to is sitting over there. Part of a union, part of a official, government official, someone else who's nothing relevant to what you're talking about, and you had really nothing to do with it, and they can prove it. So that's how you mess up their clockworks. My own auntie worked for the same company, and she too wrote a report about me and quizzed me about what I was doing and asked me how I was doing, why I was doing it. Then she wrote a report, bagging the shit out of me. It's okay, I didn't like her anyway. But at the end of the day, the information I gave her too was incorrect. Everything was incorrect. And later on, I actually spoke to ISS and said, well, listen, if she stopped talking at barbecues, I wouldn't have half the information. Well, it was just a fact that that never happened either. It was just an information deterrent. So it would make them look somewhere else for something that's not there. So you can say whatever you want, as long as you're not defaming somebody, you can say whatever you want. I don't know if she spoke at a barbecue. Well, how the hell do I know? I wasn't there. Same with Steve, I know what he's saying because he quizzed me about it. But you think I'm going to tell him what I'm doing? No way in the world. I'm going to give you wrong information to send you down the wrong street, so you go looking in a back alley for information that never existed. And you'd be surprised what they dig up. They dig up information, next minute you've got new information because they dug it up for you. And they turn someone against themselves for you, for your purpose. So it then builds your army because they come to you saying, hey, how come I'm getting looked at for this? I've got nothing to do with this. And I go, I don't know. I never mentioned your name. So why are they looking at you? What have you done? So they then claimed that I did not provide the undertakings sought by my lawyer, which I told them I'm not giving you any undertakings unless you pay me, so there's no undertakings going to be happening until I get compensation. Which is why these videos are now cropping up all over YouTube, because again, I've given them ample time. I've spoke to them since the court case. I've spoke to them as early as last year. No reply. So now we're going to make the world know how to do it, what to do, and how to bring corporations like this, because there's other ISS venues, and I tell you, they treat the staff the same. I've heard it all, and this gives the people an opportunity to file their complaints in the right direction, to bring the hammer down on corporations like that. So they then turned around and said that they were presently assisting government agencies in relation to obtaining statements of the conduct of ISS security. He claimed that he was sourcing people who received letters and threats from ISS security, and claimed that the contract within the organisation are extensive, connections in the organisation are extensive, with my family also being previous workers of Group 4, Group 4-1, Group 4-2, Group 4-3 to ISS, which they were. But that was more relevant to my auntie, who doesn't like me at all, I don't like her at all. So really that was the only person. The other family members were all out of ISS by then, out of Group 4 by then. So they went on to then scrutinise the auntie about her involvement, blah blah blah. But again, that was just a stall tactic. It's just a way to make things look messy when they're really not. They're not messy at all, but you got to make it look messy so they can't keep track of what you're doing. If they're hunting unscented trails thinking that's where you are, then they're never going to find anything. So it gives you time to prepare your next battle, how you're going to fight them. So the solicitor informed me about the 9th of March. Courtesy copies of correspondence to Mr. Aggett asserted that he sent to AFP Backall, the Australian Federal Police, the Commissioner, representative, Mr. Aggett. Correspondence enclosed a copy of handwritten document marked private and sick from Litta Ritter of ISS Security. The document, a confidential document, being the complaint of Miss Ritter against my ex at the time, and was an employee of ISS. Also attached as correspondence, internal memorandum, Charles Blinkworth, that concerns Mr. Aggett's enclosed documents, correspondence to Emma Lawyer, and internal ISS documents. I do not know how he obtained these documents, now produced, shown to me as PB15, and letters dated. The way I got them documents was simple. If you have someone who's been through a court case and they get evidence to their court case, they can ask for a copy of their file through Freedom of Information, because it's been through either of the QIRC, Queensland Industrial Relations Commission, Australian Industrial Relations Commission, through some sort of inquiry through a government official. Once that document is returned, because it's stamped FRY, it's opened up for freedom of information, they can then write you a letter signed by JP saying that you may have those documents and you may do what you wish with them. They're open for public. Like, they can be given to anybody, media. They can be given to anybody. There is no laws about containing you, who you can and can't disseminate that to once it's been stamped. That's why it's important. No matter, even if you're working for Coles, you lodge your own fraud case against yourself that never happened with Centrelink, and you provide the relevant documents from your workplace that you want to make publicly open as evidence. You're going to be cleared of fraud because you never committed. But now you've got the evidence in place, you can FRY your documents back. They'll be stamped with freedom of information because they're not relevant, they're not from a government authority, and nobody gives a shit. So it doesn't matter who you work for. And I'm not saying anything about Big W or Woolworths being bad for their employees. I worked for them, they're great, I had no problems with them. But it just gives you an avenue to be able to get documents from your employer to be making them public. So you must involve the government authority. So it doesn't matter which one you do, you pick a fight with them, supply the documents as evidence. That clears you from your any sort of confidentiality document you've signed with your employer, which now becomes relevant because now you're talking to a governing authority. And then you FOI the documents back. They'll stamp them because they're not even relevant to your case, so they don't care. They don't know what the relevance is. So they can't black anything out because they don't know what part's relevant and what part's not. So they don't care. They give you the whole thing back. And then that way you can then publish the documents. And when the employer cracks up and says, you can't publish these documents, well, I can because these ones are FOI stamped. When they're stamped by freedom of information, it means they've gone through a process of clearance, and once they've gone through a process of clearance, there's no threat to the government. They stamp them and they send them back. They don't care. So I'll see you in the next episode.